Hey guys, I want to make this video talking about the truth of Italian real estate. Right now on YouTube for the past few years, um, there's this story going around that Italy and other countries like Croatia or Spain, etc., have these good deals, and it's the time to buy right now. And there's very affordable um, real estate in Italy and Spain, etc. And just come over and buy it up, etc. So I want to talk about that because I was going for a late night walk right now, and I was thinking I should make this video just talking about all these lies and false narratives on YouTube, clear it up, talk about some things. So first of all, I want to explain the situation in Italy, the real estate situation. So you know how a lot of people will say in London, California, a lot of these hotspots in the world, real estate is very expensive. It's inflated, especially in Canada and Vancouver and Toronto. They say, oh, it's very inflated, the housing market and everything's unaffordable. So that's the situation in Croatia right now and in Italy and Spain. So housing is very unaffordable and very expensive. Um, s- One of the main false narratives going around on YouTube are these shacks for sale. So something that's not just in Italy, but in pretty much every country. But I'm going to use the United States as an example. If you download the application Zillow or go online, there's this website called Zillow. I think it's just American thing, and you're able to see the prices of properties and et cetera and the history of them. So if you go in a lot of states, especially over here like Pennsylvania, on the western Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania, there's a lot of towns here, and not just Pennsylvania, but also in Michigan, near Detroit, and all over the U.S. where nice homes, decent homes, two-story homes that are not in bad condition, that are even suburban, will go for sale for like $5,000, $2,000, 1,000, a few $100 for a house, for a whole house for sale. And those are called shacks. People make it very clear. Oh, well, this is on a dead mining town somewhere here in Pennsylvania, and there's nothing there, and that's why the thing is so cheap. It's a small little, let's say bungalow that's 50 years old. It's not worth buying. So people make it, and it's not just an American thing. In most countries, very rural, dead areas, there's these, let's say, unlivable bungalow situations for sale for very affordable prices. So that's the same in Spain and Italy. In Italy, in the mountains, not just in the mountains, but in a lot of dead areas, there are not a few hundred, but tens of thousands of these just abandoned shacks for sale. I wouldn't consider these places livable. I'm not talking about the condition of these bungalows or small homes or whatever. I just mean the location itself is very isolated and rural. Um, Obviously, someone from, who knows, Cleveland, Ohio, or something will show up. Oh, look at this mountain! It's beautiful. Anything will be beautiful in Italy, right, for them. But it's in what I would say geographically ugly areas, and they're very isolated, and people, let's say, don't want to live there. Italians don't live there. So they're like, okay, well, my family hasn't been using this for the past 40 years. I'll put it for sale for very cheap price, right? So that's why Americans, hey, look over here, somewhere in this small village, there's a property for sale for whatever, 1,000 €, 4,000 euros, 40,000, 100,000. It doesn't matter. It's cheap. It's cheap. I want to buy it. Look, it's a nice little bungalow for, okay. Um, and there are people that buy it and then regret it. Like after a year or two, they realize, okay, this is like, I got scammed. I got rug pulled. I spent whatever money on it, even if it was very cheap, and they don't want to live there anymore because they realize there's a reason it was that price. And in those, when you're on YouTube or online for the past 25 years, those very affordable houses are just that, shacks. These like unlivable shacks in ugly areas for sale. The reason in the beginning of this video I said real estate here and in Croatia, etc., is as expensive as Vancouver in Canada or California or whatever, is because it is. Not just in the cities, but if you go, like, just let's say you look at Italy right now, right? Imagine 50 dots, polka dots all over this peninsula and on the islands too, just polka dots. Those dots, those 50 dots you see, are the livable areas of Italy. And when I say livable, I'm not even saying just in a city or outside of a city or whatever. I'm just saying areas that are nice, connected, relatively near an airport, good infrastructure, a good geography. It's, you know what I mean, like that type. The whole peninsula is not like that. It's just 50 dots all over Italy. Spain, for those that don't know, mainland Spain is twice the size of Italy. Italy right here is 250,000 square kilometers. 250,000. Spain, just not even Portugal, just like the country of Spain, is over 500,000 square kilometers, right? The population actually in Spain is much lower than Italy. Like I think it's over 20 million less people living in Spain. So Spain is very empty, and not just that, it's very urbanized. So a lot of majority of the population lives in these like 12 cities. Um, so it's less populated than Italy, and I would say Italy, when it comes to those 50 livable, nice areas of those, imagine those dots all over the peninsula. In Spain, it'll be like 25 polka dots all over Spain, meaning that okay, there are nice areas, of course, beautiful areas in Spain, but it's less than. I would say Italy has more um, of those spots than Spain does. Spain has, of course, on the coast, on the islands, for sure, a lot of nice places, but a lot of this chunk in the middle. There are a few spots in the middle, but 8 or 5 or 3 spots in the middle. This whole area here. Um, and So you, like I said, you have, let's say, foreigners, expats, Westerners. A lot of them boomers, which I find very annoying. Thankfully, these boomers will expire in like 10, 20 years, like disappear forever. And a big percentage of them will liquidate before. They won't, they don't have, they come from like Cleveland, Ohio or whatever, from Texas. So they tend, or they're Anglos from the UK, and they're not the types to give the properties to their kids, a lot of them. So a lot of them will just liquidate before they die and, I don't know, blow the money on something, right? So thankfully these boomers, their impact is bad because they do show up, especially in Tuscany. And this has been since the 1980s. I would say since the 1980s. Thankfully, it hasn't been completely overwhelming, but it is impactful. You know, hundreds of these like yuppie Americans showing up to these towns, villages, and buying up apartments and homes. And, you know, like I said, it's not overwhelming. Each village will have just a handful of them, but it is annoying because they do somewhat inflate the market for locals, which is not good. And they tend to they have a mentality because they're like from Anglo countries. They have a mentality to monetize everything, so it's always like flipping and trying to turn housing into a business instead of just like a, you know, they see cheap housing as an opportunity to turn it expensive, right? That's their mentality. And flip it, or who knows what. So, but thankfully, like I said, their impact in the past few decades has been minimal. Let's put it. It hasn't really wrecked Italy. Like Italy still has. I, a good thing to highlight is Italy. There was a time where you could buy an actual ranch, a beautiful, um, you know, Italian villa with land, and in one of those like 50 dots that I spoke about for a good deal. Like there was those deals. Like I would say the time was 1995 to 2010. You know, 1995 to 2010. That's when there were good livable properties for sale and there were deals. Right. That's over now. That's been what, almost 20 years. That was almost 20 years ago. 2010 was 16 so years ago. So the time is done. Um, and uh, and now, yeah, if you want to buy one of those places that you could have bought for 100,000 in 2005, 21 years ago, that exact house now is like 2.5 million. You know, like a beachside Tuscan home with land or something, you know, near Rome or in Sicily, a whole ranch, whatever. These in the late 90s, early 2000s, they were going for, you know, 200,000, 400,000. Those same properties are for millions now, right? And you won't find those deals anymore. It's over. Right now, 2026, and going forward, I'm not gonna lie, everything's possible. There will be a few spots. This is very rare. A few spots in Italy where you can still find those deals, but you really have to look very hard and get lucky. Where you can find like for 400,000 euros, something that will appreciate to the millions in a few years, right? But that time is kind of over. That was 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago. Um, and something important is, I'm not saying that there's no deals in Italy. For example, in central Italy, these two regions here, Tuscany and Umbria, these places have um, homes for sale for like 100, 200, 300,000 euros, right? These homes should be priced at half a million or over half a million. They will be soon in a few years because of societal reasons. Italy is still a few decades behind when it comes to the evolution of our societies or whatever. So a lot of people still are. A lot of Italians, like even um, wealthy or upper middle class Italians, are in the cities, in these apartments, these ugly apartments. They just like it there. It's just a matter of time before urban flight starts happening and people just live full time on the countryside. So thankfully that hasn't happened yet in Italy. The countryside is still underappreciated, but it's just like very soon, like in 5, 10 years, the countryside will get swamped by not just because Italy is not a country; it's all European Union is one big country. It's just a matter of time before wealthy Germans and French, etc., start swamping the countryside in Italy. It's already started to happen. It's gonna get worse, and this whole Mediterranean coast, not the entire coast, but the nice spots, like in Croatia, um, from southern Croatia to, let's say, this whole coastline of Croatia will get swamped, and also a lot of places in Greece. So real estate will become a luxury here. And when I say luxury, I'm saying like, oh, a villa you can find now for 800,000 will go for the 5 million in 10 years because urban flight hasn't happened yet. People under a lot of Europeans underappreciate the countryside, and that's going to change. In America, that's already happened. What 30 years ago? 30 years ago, the cities just got emptied. A lot of, let's say, um, of that middle class, wealthier Americans left the cities and moved out. This urban flight happened a long time ago in the U.S. It's going to happen in Europe. Europe is livable still. It's still high trust. It's still safe. It's Disneyland. Most of all, the past 40 years has been like complete Disneyland for Europeans. That's already starting to change, and yeah, the countryside is going to get very gentrified or whatever the word is. Becoming like basically what happened to Cyprus. 20 years ago, Cyprus was just some like quiet. Cypriots were dominating these. It was they were landowning. It's all over now. You go there and it's a whole like resort island for wealthy people, and a lot of places in Greece have been transformed, even the Spanish islands, and it's a matter of time before a lot of these spots in Italy will become swarmed by rich Americans and rich Northern Europeans, right? So, like I said, when I look at Italy, or most people look at Italy, most of it is unlivable. I would consider, not just me, but like anyone that knows Italy. Um, it's always those spots. You have to imagine, like I said, 50 dots all over the peninsula, and those places are the nice, livable places where you can buy property. If it's outside that spot, for example, if you are looking at properties and you identify a what I call a shack, what I talked about before, um, if you identify a shack and you're like, oh, it's a good deal, right? It's a cheap price. It's 5,000, 100,000. It doesn't matter, right? It's not worth buying at all. It's not livable. It's not an investment. You're just getting scammed. You're getting milked. And I actually support that. I actually support a lot of insufferable, boomers, and that's happened a lot in Italy where they just show up, especially to Sicily, and like try to move here and buy like 100,000 euro shack, and then they regret it after a year or two, and they go back to the States. I always find that funny, and I support that. But it's still funny how on YouTube that grift is still going. Like there's a lot of YouTubers saying, "Hey, look at this shack. It's only 200,000 euros," and it's like, bro, that's a shack. You can't live there. It's in the mountains, deep in the mountains. Yeah, but it's in Italy, and look at this. Look, it has a view of this mountain over here. So, you know, and people fall for that. So, but like I said, if you even coastal Croatia, a livable property here goes in the millions. A cheap one is like 800,000. A very cheap one's half a million. And those I would consider anything over half a million. I would consider luxury. I know it's not luxury. Luxury is supposed to be like 5 million, 2 million, a mansion, right? For me, anything over half a million globally gets you a nice house. In Cape Town, Cape Town, you can get a nice, basically a mansion with a nice garden in Cape Town for half a million to 900,000. euros. Same in California. In California, you can get and people, someone watching this will be like, hold on, it's like a nice place in Cape Town is actually 2 million. No, it's not. Okay, there are huge mansions, like ludicrous sized mansions with 8 bedrooms and gigantic garden. No, but you can find a 2 bedroom house, a nice 2 bedroom house with a decent sized garden for 500,000, 700,000. In Constancia. Same in California. That you can for 700 900,000 you can find a bungalow, a nice 2 bedroom bungalow with a small garden, looking towards the Bay Bridge. Not the Bay Bridge. What is this? The Golden Gate Bridge. Um, there are properties here in this area that are livable, nice homes going for that price. So I would say globally, that's 500,000 to 1 million. You can get a lot around the world for that money. And in Italy, that's what a livable house costs. If you want, even in Croatia or in Spain, like, oh, you want a house where you could park your car, where you have a garden, where you have 2 3 bedrooms, where you have some sort of view, and it's in one of, like I said, those livable spots of the country. That's the price. It's literally 700,000, 800,000. Those are the prices. Um, and then so and that's the average price. It goes higher and not much lower. And yeah, there's just a lot of this false news on YouTube saying no, 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 no. You can find a livable place, a nice place in Italy for 200,000, 100,000, 50,000, whatever. That's all a lie. That's all BS. That's all a lie. That was true if someone made that video in 2002. That would have been true. There were deals. That time's over. There's no more deals in these countries. Uh, Real property inflation started happening around 2010. Um, so like I said, before that time, you could find livable estates for less than 500,000. That was the time to buy. Now that exact property or property similar to that would be easily over 2 million, and that's what's happened. So there's places in the world right now where, for example, Vietnam, Bali, it's over. The same thing goes for Bali or Vietnam. There was a time 20 years ago where you can find deals. Now you go there, and prices have inflated to hell. So you can't find for. You could actually find better properties in Europe for the same or lower, actually. So um, things change. There's places where it's the time to buy, and that's not the case with the Mediterranean. Something I want to add is the population collapse of these countries. A lot of Western Europe, millennials, Gen Z is just not having kids, and that's going to be very impactful in like 10, 20 years from now when we start noticing huge population. How do I say, like a lot of places, for example, here. Where is this? Well, goes for all of Italy, right? So here, right, there's like, we can count maybe 40. Let me give you an example right here. We can count 40 of these mountain places, right? If you go to this, let's say mountain village right here on the coast, and you walk around, there's people living in these homes. There's actual Italians. They're all Gen X or boomers, whatever. But you go here, and there's a population of 400 people, 300 people, whatever. In 20 years, that won't be the case. These places will be completely empty, and there's not just one village, but there's going to be thousands of villages all over Italy that'll just be sitting empty. And these properties, you can find properties like, and I would consider a place that I showed you right up there would be considered that a shack. A little apartment, 50 square meter apartment there, selling for 80,000, whatever. The point is, a lot of immigrants are showing up in Italy, and they're going to start buying up these places. And when I say immigrants, I'm not talking about Western expats. I'm talking straight up like Bengalis and stuff. Millions are showing up already in Italy, and these deals, they don't care if it's livable. They don't care if it's a shack. They're going to start buying it up. They're really going to start slurping it up, and like I said, the Italian population itself is going to become very low. It's like the demographics is really a upside down pyramid. So in 20 years, we're really going to see huge population collapse in Spain and Italy. Like that native Italian population is going to be like 5 million. People don't believe, like people don't really comprehend this, what I'm saying. But same happened to Canada, or is happening to Canada. And what we see in Canada is just Europe. Western Europe is 10 years behind, and 10 years isn't that long. When it comes to if you're Gen Z, that's easily in our lifetime when we're 30s and our 40s and stuff. So there'll be a huge transformation. I would say right now we're at the beginning phases of like South Africa. What South Africa was in the 90s, in the middle 90s, that's what Europe is right now. So if you're a Zoomer, not a Boomer, not one of those yuppie, Americans from hell showing up and whatever buying property. I'm not talking about those. How do I say lifestyle leeches? Uh, I'm talking about those that were fortunately born in nice areas. And what's the move for us, right? Well, in Italy, Italians really did luck out overall because Italy is a unique situation where the majority of the population inherit properties like it's candy. It really is this phenomenon in Italy where the average Italian inherits not just one or five like maybe a dozen, 2 dozen properties. Half of the time they sell the shacks, they keep the nice stuff. There is this ingrained culture of inheritance in Italy, and you don't really find that in the U.S. or in other countries. People there just they have to get a job, right, and get a mortgage and buy a house, and that really isn't a situation like that. That does happen in Italy. It's rare, but most Italians are very spoiled when it comes to lifestyle. It's kind of funny how a lot of um, other countries will be like, "Oh, we're actually richer, we have better." No, Italians have probably one of the highest, easily the highest quality of life in the entire planet. That a poor Italian lives like a upper middle class American. Literally, a poor Sicilian has a better life than a rich person in a lot of places in the world. Um, so the quality of life here is, but this, like I said, this Disneyland situation is coming to an end. Boomers are checking out just in time, and things are going to start really, like, for example, France. 25% of property in France is owned by a migrant that was not born in the country, by a foreigner that wasn't born in France. You know, and we don't really see that in Italy or Spain yet. It's just a matter of time, matter of 10 years before also a quarter of the real estate here is owned by not, I'm not saying non-Italians, but I'm just saying like literally non-Europeans. It'll be funny. So lifestyle is going to become impactful. Like I said, people, as if you don't know this yet, an advice is cities are going to be unlivable. So I get it now. Today, you go to a lot of cities and it's still somewhat livable. That chapters of history is going to end. Just like in America. So if you're like a Swede and you're looking at a decent neighborhood in Stockholm and you found a good apartment for sale, whatever, and it's only 400,000 euros, I'm telling you that's not a good long term investment because that area is not livable. And when I'm talking about housing as like a place you're living, not an investment or whatever, I'm just saying somewhere you're gonna live and have kids. Smart people realize like you have to go in a countryside, right? And some countries are better than others. No offense, but um, for example, I'm not a Scandinavian type of person. I would never. For me, it would be hell to live up in a Scandinavian country. Um, Not just because the weather, but society and government is just insufferable. Having the government, breathe down your neck. The same happens in Italy, where the government's insufferable, but it's still not as bad as other countries where you have them like literally staring at you while you're sleeping in that type of situation going on. So yeah, I would say, yeah, unfortunately, the time is over. With like, for example, I was looking in Spain and thinking, you know, yeah, there has been foreigners. Like I'm talking about British people or Americans or whatever it is coming and slurping up all the deals here. And I was thinking, are there still deals? Are there still like, and when I say deals, I'm talking about a property, a house, right? That costs 3 million euros that is selling for 300,000. That's what I mean by a deal. For example, in some places in central Italy, there are some deals still left. There's properties selling for 200,000 that soon will be 500,000. That's what I call a deal. Uh, and I know some people might not get what I'm saying. What do you mean it's going to cost 500,000? I mean, it's undervalued. The house that is being sold is heavily undervalued, and when rural places, especially in the Mediterranean, appreciate, it'll go into like it's like it's already been house properties has property prices have been inflated, but it'll be inflated even more going forward because of all the urban flight that's going to happen from the native bourgeois class are going to start leaving the cities and appreciating the countryside, and the shacks won't appreciate because, like I said, shacks unfortunately just are in those areas that are unlivable and ugly areas, and they're just small dwellings that no one wants to live in. So those won't appreciate. But I'm talking about those, you know, places here in you know, central Italy that are connected, only a few hours away, like an hour away from Florence or Rome, and have a great view and a garden, whatever. Those nice places. There are still some there selling for like 200,000 euros, and those are undervalued as of today. There isn't many because most of those deals you'll see will actually just be shacks. Be like, oh, actually, it's just this 140 square meter apartment looking at a few trees outside the window, and like I said, those places aren't livable. So I'm gonna wrap up this video. I just wanted to talk about this. There's a few things I'm forgetting to mention. Something about the future and society or whatever, but or the shifts, because yeah, the right now we are in like the end phase of Disneyland in Western Europe, and Zoomers like my generation, we need to make the smart choices and, you know, get our homestead in a decent area. And I've just been on YouTube. It's always funny just seeing those videos of like, oh right, buy up in Italy, and they just keep selling these shacks. And I just wanted to clear it up that no, real estate is expensive in Italy. Those homesteads that are I consider, um, you know, basic, go for 700,000. And it's kind of funny how in Italy they gaslight you into like, oh, the 700,000, that's actually a deal. No, 700,000 you could get a lot of better places around the world, or even in other places in Europe. So it is inflated. Croatia, Spain, it already is. It's over. Anytime you hear a price under 500,000 for it, it's usually just a shack, or even apartments. Don't get apartments in cities. Those, like I said, are not going to be livable soon. So thanks for watching. I'm gonna end the video now. Bye.